Hi, guys. Exciting news for season 4. The Thrive Tribe newsletter is for everyone and it's free.
To sign up for our newsletter and to get more out of Chasing Brighter and engage with our amazing community, go to chasingbrighter.com/newsletter to get the latest updates.
And every month we have freebies, so check it out.
Welcome to the Chasing Brighter podcast, the podcast created as a guide to make midlife the best life.
Are you ready to embrace the next chapter of your life with confidence and excitement? Your best life is just a listen away. Hi, everybody. Welcome back to Chasing Brighter. Today, Kelly and I are going to guide you from being people-pleasing to being powerful and feeling your own worth. We want to talk about what so many of us struggle with, which is people-pleasing. I think this episode really resonates with Kelly and I. I think for me, for years, I would say the first 40 years of my life, I thought putting everyone else first made me a good person. I thought it made me a good friend. But what I didn't realize is that constantly chasing approval drained me of my confidence, my energy, and ultimately my self-worth.
Yeah. So the good news is today we're rewriting that story, Jess, moving from people-pleasing to powerful. Because when you own your worth, you stop living for others and start living for yourself. Yeah, I think for me too, because our mother is a people pleaser. And so part of that trait I definitely inherited as well.
Yeah, I thought that I remember I went to a spiritual healer and you kind of went through the chakras and she went by the heart and she was like, your like friends are there, but if you like lift up behind you, it's you. So when a friend lets you down, you're not mad at your friends, you're mad at yourself. And I did not get that at the time. And it took me a really long time to unpack that. But I realized I would put everyone before myself. And I think sometimes too that led to resentment. I would bend over backward for everybody. And then when they didn't do that, I wasn't getting upset with them. I was like internalizing that. So it really, I think, chips away at your self-worth over years and years and years too.
Yeah, 100%. And so, let's dive into what people pleasing is, because I feel like we both have such a understanding of it. But
Yeah.
for those of you who kind of like aren't sure where that fits in, it's really about this tendency to prioritize others' needs over your own, often out of fear of rejection or conflict or not being liked. Um,
Yeah.
I think what makes me a good consultant in my business practice is because I oversee projects and I am a customer pleaser. And so
Mm-hmm.
I do everything, bend over backwards, push my team as much as I can to please the customer and to get that, like, keep them happy.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm not very good sometimes about like delivering bad news or being realistic about stuff. And so I put myself in the middle all the time. And so I think what I realize, and I'm living this like literally right now with work, where I don't know why I care so much sometimes about
Yeah.
everything else that's going on, because I am truly sacrificing my own self-worth by doing
Yeah.
this. And I
I
don't
know
need
we'll
that
get
stress.
I know we'll get into diving into the why in a little bit too, but I think for me, when I heard the term empath, and one definition of empath is you feel like you're responsible for the emotions of the room. And so for me, I would rather take on everyone's stress than like, it's uncomfortable for me, for the people that I love, to have negative feelings. And so I'd rather just take it all on myself because I told myself the story, I could handle it. I remember my 14-year-old was born November 4th, and we hosted Thanksgiving and we also hosted the Martin Christmas. I absolutely have no idea how I did that. I don't know. And talk about the mental load of having a newborn and also ordering all of the Christmas gifts and coordinating 2 major holidays in a 60-day period was insanity. And I think too, sometimes you're not even aware that you're doing everything for everyone if that's kind of your go-to, that's your status quo. But that really can lead there's a cost to all of that. It can lead to burnout, resentment, loss of identity, self-doubt. For me, so much resentment. And it was like 2021 when I heard on a podcast someone say resentment is drinking poison and expecting the other person to die. And that just like shifted everything for me. And I did not like resentment hurts me. And so I was like, how do I unburden myself from all of that? And so just
Yes.
kind of really even noticing the cost of people pleasing.
Yeah. And like, why do we do it? Right. So
Yeah.
this is the thing. It's like it starts early. Maybe you grew up in an environment where that was tied to you know, maybe the idea of keeping the household happy and keeping peace and feeling safer rather than speaking up. I have
Yeah.
such a hard time for me of that, where it's like
When,
I need to keep the peace.
when we had Sophia Line on the podcast and she talked about the fawning response and the research now of, it used to be fight, flight, or freeze when we feel like we're in danger, but it's fight, fight, freeze, or please is the new one. And so for some of
Yeah,
us, when stuff's going down, we have the need to take care of everyone else and put our own needs on the back burner. So yeah, a lot of times that develops in childhood where we feel like we have to take care of everybody else, make sure everyone else is okay. Maybe you get accolades for performance achievement, maybe some codependence when you're younger. So it can start when you're younger, but we can normalize it. Like it's not weakness; it's a coping strategy.
mm-hmm.
But what we have done to keep us safe, then we just need to recognize that that's holding us back now.
100%.
Um, yeah. And so, like I shared before, for me, it led to resentment. I would notice that even simple things, like I don't know if you feel about like this, Kelly, but like even simple things like, we both work. And so if a friend said, hey, let's go get coffee, I would clear my schedule for that. It's not like I was open for that, but I would clear my schedule for a friend and then they would bail on me.
Yeah. Yeah.
And then I would do it again and I'd bend over backwards. And so just that even making yourself available when maybe that's uncomfortable for you, that is people pleasing, I think.
I think another example of it, Jess, is for a lot of us who are moms, how many times we bend over backwards for a particular child and their request, only for it to be met with like lack of appreciation, or they've already moved on to the other thing. And so it's
Yeah.
like something that I'm trying to appease because it feels like it might be really important, only to realize it's
Yeah.
not. And it
Yeah.
just is like this endless death spiral sometimes.
Yeah. Well, I love that quote too. When you try to be everything to everyone, you end up being nothing to no one.
Yeah.
Even earlier this week, I know we've talked about this. I've been trying, like, I don't need to go to everything for all three of my children. This is a crazy week. And so I decided on Monday to stay home with my youngest to get all of his homework done for the week because he had a lot of practices and he had a double header this week. Wasn't sure how I felt about it because I was missing my 14-year-old's game. And then all these people were calling and texting because he hit a home run. And then I felt so guilty because I missed his game and I was feeling uncomfortable because I wasn't pleasing him. And then, but if you become everything to everyone, you'll be nothing to no one. So if I wouldn't have done that, it would have just really stretched me way too thin.
Yeah.
And as a parent, sometimes you have to just kind of set those boundaries. And I think that helps shift us to that awareness of tapping into yourself and just taking a moment and asking what it is that you need, taking that moment and asking yourself, like, instead of just automatically saying yes, pause before committing. Am I saying yes out of desire or fear? And I don't know if it was fear. What is it for you? Like when it comes to friends, uh, maybe ultimately, subconsciously, there was a fear that they wouldn't be my friend or like me if I didn't do those things. Maybe that was really deep down. Or like with your kids, they'll be unhappy
Yeah.
or they'll be
I have a
uncomfortable or they'll be sad or you'll disappoint them.
I have a tremendous fear, I think, of like disappointing others. Like full
Yeah.
stop, that's what it is. And like why is that tied to my identity? You know what I mean? Like
Yeah. Yeah.
why do I feel like that is important?
Yeah.
I don't know, I need to sit with that
Yeah.
more. I married somebody who is not a people pleaser and just does
Same.
what they want. And I really admire
Same.
that in my spouse. Sometimes I feel like it might come across a little harsh, but in all reality, it served him well for him, the way
Yeah,
he
I mean, I think
operates.
it's a balance of being genuine to yourself.
Yeah.
Like if you're a people pleaser, you're not going to be like your husband just because that's his thing.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
think, but I think it's more about that you're taking a minute to think about something, right? And that's where boundaries come in because boundaries are acts of self respect. They're not walls, you know, they are doors that we can open and close and lock, and we can decide who comes in and who comes out and what we want to do. And so I think it's just sitting and thinking with it because I think it's beautiful if you're more empathic. I think it's beautiful
Yeah.
if a person is compassionate too. We don't want to like lose that and say, oh, I wish I could be like this person because, I know my older son and my husband are like that. They're not always thinking of the needs of others first, which, like you're saying, is so freeing. Sometimes I'm like, wow, that must be so freeing.
Yes.
But it just is. There's no good or bad.
Yes. Yes. No,
So,
I
more
agree.
about
I think that's a great
boundaries.
point.
You know,
Yeah.
do you have some ideas on different boundaries we can say that help build our self respect?
I think for me, it is about because in some ways, when I hear boundaries, I'll think about just like the words you choose and how they can like free you, right? In
Yeah.
some of these things. And using different phrases to deal with a given situation, I think that's probably where I could use a little work myself in terms of really kind of saying something like, I know that might be important to you, but that's not going to work for me or whatever that might be in a way that can be more constructive.
Mm-hmm.
So it's the idea of I love the idea of like reclaiming power essentially in
Yeah.
the whole thing and reframing that, if somebody's upset about what you're doing, it doesn't mean that you're wrong. It's just kind of disrupting the pattern. I love that the idea of it disrupting the pattern of self-sacrifice because that's the thing is we're sacrificing ourselves in these situations.
Yeah, like if you're deciding on what you want to do for dinner and let's say you really want tacos, but you don't want to like disappoint maybe your friend doesn't like tacos. Instead of saying I don't care whatever you want, right? You can say I'd rather have tacos.
Yep.
So don't say I don't care whatever you want. But so that's a boundary. I think about too when people ask you to do things, I think you want to say yes and sue the other person. So how do you put a buffer between you and yes? So you say, let me get back to you on that. Let me check my schedule. I'll call you right back. You can say, I'm not sure if that works for me. Let me check. You know, I've had people upset with my boundaries and it's changed friendships. Um, and that's kind of like what you're saying, right? It doesn't mean you're bad,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
And I think it's so important that you celebrate wins, celebrate when you do set a
Yes.
boundary. I think because it can feel very uncomfortable.
And on this topic, because it's so much of, I think a lot of my anxiety is rooted in people pleasing.
Mm-hmm.
That now that we're talking about it in this way, um, I just feel like using this way to sort of set those boundaries and reframe that can really kind of alleviate some of that anxiety I have.
Yeah.
And I like the idea of celebrating small wins for sure.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Um, honoring your own needs and strengthening that confidence muscle. And I think It's not that I don't have any confidence. It's the fact that I'm just really afraid of like hurting other people's feelings like all the time or like making people upset. It's like part of the core of like who I am that I want to do more work on, you know?
Well, and this whole month talking about confidence, it's like maybe that is something to sit with for you. Because for me, when the spiritual healer was like, you struggle with self worth, I was like, no, I don't think that's what it is. You know what I mean? But then later, you and I took that Enneagram,
Hmm.
and mine was like the achiever. And so it's like just kind of recognizing how I feel like I need to do a song and dance for love from other people. And what's that about? You know what I mean? Like, so it's not like I literally sat around and was like, I'm an idiot. I don't have confidence. Like, yes,
Right.
I think we have confidence and feel good about ourselves in a lot of areas, but it's like, ooh, what is that about? Like, why? Like, is that a trauma response or what's that about? I feel like in our home growing up, it wasn't safe. I don't think it was necessarily safe at times to be your authentic self because it was explosive,
Yeah.
right? So you just want to like manage the mood of the home. And so you wouldn't, right? We wouldn't be honoring our needs because the vibe in the home was like, you need to be quiet, go somewhere. And so then we learn to not be free to honor our needs and ask what we need, you know?
Yes. Yeah. This is the idea of, and I think it's that confidence of like living in your own worth. And
Yeah.
even though we feel like we are confident women in these situations, maybe I'm not confident. I'm not confident with really speaking my
Yeah.
truth. And so, when you step out of people pleasing, you discover that your worth isn't tied to how much you do for others, but it's intrinsic. You are valuable because you exist.
I
And
love that.
I love that too. And I think that that is like this mantra that you want to tell
Yeah.
yourself, right?
You
Is
are
that,
worthy. You are
yes,
worthy because you are here. Period. The end. You don't need to do anything to be
yeah,
worthy, which is my work. I continue to do because that's a tough one for me. I don't think I'm doing it from worthiness, but ultimately I believe I am. So got to keep chipping away at that.
yeah. And I think that's where, we're choosing some words that maybe don't sit well with us to
Yeah.
describe things. But I feel like,
Yeah.
now that we're discussing, it's like, yeah, I think that probably is, you know, it is true because if I had maybe for myself, um, maybe a higher self worth, I wouldn't be so worried about offending others
Yeah,
with
like
what I
if you just
say.
were like, I am worthy and the people, and it's more too like the people in my life love me no matter what,
Yeah.
right? Like those
Yes.
things. And so
Yes.
when you're able to set boundaries and stop people pleasing, I think you have more energy, healthier relationships, like you're saying, deeper authenticity, truer
Yes.
joy. Like that's such a weight on us if we're, so it sounds, if we're worried about what other people think or do or say or any of that, right? For me, I think it's led to closer, more intimate relationships. I have a lot less relationships now that I've stopped people pleasing. But maybe it's opened me up to other relationships, but it ended some relationships, which I think is ultimately good. When I started setting boundaries and not bending over backwards and making myself available 24/7, there were people in my life that didn't respond well to that. And so it's like, bye, you know, don't let the door hit you on the way out. And then that's opened me up to the relationships I have being better. And then to it's less complicated, right? Like when you can just say or do whatever you want and you know that person's going to like be there
Yeah.
and love you no matter what, right?
Yes.
Versus
Yeah.
like, oh, I don't want to make her mad. She's prickly or whatever, you
Yeah.
know?
And I think you're giving some great examples of our personal relationships and
Mm-hmm.
how it's important, how those can benefit. And just as important might be your work relationships. Maybe it's
Mm-hmm.
coworkers, maybe it's your boss, maybe it's your customers or clients. And it's the same thing. I right now have a hard time I used to not work on Fridays and I used to have booze, like just I'd go to lunch and I'd hang out maybe
Mm-hmm.
at the pool on Fridays in the summer. And I have kind of given that up and I'm working on Fridays because I feel like I
Mm-hmm.
have customers who need me. And I think that's an example for myself as I chose to make a career change to have more flexibility. And now I'm like putting myself at the mercy of my clients again instead of setting those boundaries. Am I afraid that if I say no, I'm not going to be available Friday, that they're going to like get rid of me? Right?
Yeah.
Like, what is that?
Yes. And Cassidy Owen and I talked about that when she was on our Superwoman Diaries about what's the point of having your own business if you're, if you are like not doing whatever you want and how we get kind of
Yeah.
tripped up on that. I give examples when I very first started. I was working weekends. I worked Saturday, Sunday. I worked nights. I was like, oh, you want to meet at midnight? Yes, I will see you. And then I started blocking time out and completely changing my schedule. And I know I've given this tip before, but I have an hourly planner. I put my workouts in there. I put things in there. Put it in permanent pen with lines so I will not put people in there. And I used to say, oh, I don't work this way, but then I work this way. And now I just say, oh, I'm not available that day. Do you have another day? I don't get any pushback from people. People will say, do you work nights and weekends? No, I don't. And then they say, okay, I'll come during lunch. I'll come in the morning. Like, it's like when I started setting those boundaries, it's like people don't say, well, what are you doing Saturday? Why can't you see me Saturday?
They will
I
honor
just
your
say, oh, I'm not
boundaries.
available. Yeah, I'm just not
Yeah.
available at that
Yeah.
time. And you don't think you don't have to owe them any explanation. But I think for a lot of us that own their own business, I think that happens. I think that happens sometimes. We start like sleeping, like I'll start letting people have earlier and earlier appointments. So I'll start working later,
It
or I'll be
starts
like, oh,
creeping
this,
in. Yes.
yes. And so then we have to like get back to it. And that's what we're talking about. This is a practice. It's not perfection, right? Some days we'll fall back into our old patterns and that's okay. But I think so much of what we talked about today is really just becoming aware of it
Yep.
and understanding it and tapping into yourself and seeing what feels good. I love caring for people. I absolutely love taking care of people. And so I think it's just tapping in. Am I doing that because I want to do it, or am I doing it because of an obligation or a need to people please? And if it's something I want to do, then I can do that,
Yeah, it's about small wins, right? Every new little boundary is a win. And I just think we can focus on that, these small changes.
Yeah. So get out your pens and paper, journals. If you want to put this in the notes of your phone, we have some journal prompts for you for today's episode. And here are your reflection questions of the week. Where in my life am I saying yes when I really want to say no? What would it look like to honor my true needs in that situation? And, write down an area where you're ready to step into power and maybe one small boundary you'd like to try to practice this week.
I love that. I love the idea of really playing out a certain challenging situation. And what would that look like if you were able to sort of recapture your power and have that work out the way you wanted to? And I think
Yeah.
playing that out sometimes makes it seem even less scary to sort of
Mm-hmm.
face too.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
think I love this episode. I think this was such a critical component of, our October episodes. People pleasing may feel safe, but it keeps us small and it keeps us feeling less in control. Owning your worth allows you to live with authenticity, freedom, and power.
Yeah. This week, practice one small act of self respect, whether it's saying no, voicing your preference or opinion, or simply resting when you're tired.
Thanks for listening today.
If you loved today's episode, share with a friend.
Are you ready to chase brighter days ahead? Subscribe to Chasing Brighter now, and let's embark on this exciting journey together.